Hello everyone, welcome back to the Putra tale. And today, I will be bringing you a horror story titled, The Haunted House No Realtor Survived, a very scary true story. But before we get into the story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like this video so that I am motivated to upload horror stories every day. And this story, tucked away on the edge of a quiet Pennsylvania suburb, stood a modest two-story house. From the outside, 421 Marrow Lane looked like any other home, well-kept lawn, white siding, and an inviting red door. But behind that door was something that had driven 6 real estate agents out of the profession entirely. No one knew exactly what was wrong with the house. There were no murders recorded, no tragic fires or crimes. And yet, no family had lived in it for more than a few weeks. Every attempt to sell it ended the same way, in fear, silence, and resignation. They say some houses just don't want to be sold. That was the thought that haunted Jenna L. Long after she quit her job, long after she packed up her license, and long after she tried to convince herself what happened was just a bad dream. But deep down, she knew better. It all started on a warm Saturday morning in early spring. The kind of day where the air feels light and everything seems just a little too quiet. Jenna had been assigned a house out in a sleepy Pennsylvania suburb, 421 Marrow Lane. A 2-story colonial that looked ordinary. White siding, neat lawn, empty driveway. The kind of place that should have sold within a week. She'd done this 100 times before. She wasn't new to the job. 10 years in real estate teaches you how to handle nervous buyers, stubborn sellers, even the occasional creepy neighbor. But this house, this one, was different. And she knew it the second she stepped through the front door. The air inside felt wrong. Not cold, not warm. Just still. Dead still. Like the house was holding its breath. Jenna chalked it up to nerves or maybe stale air. She clicked on the lights in the foyer. They flickered once, then hummed to life. The silence settled on her like a heavy coat. No birds outside. No wind. Just the creaking of the hardwood beneath her feet. She moved through the house with her phone, snapping pictures for the listing. Kitchen. Dining room. Living room. Each shot came out darker than it should have, as if the shadows were leaning in a little too close. But she brushed it off. Lighting issues were common. No big deal. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Deliberate. Slow. Heavy. Coming from the second floor. Her first instinct wasn't fear. It was annoyance. Maybe someone from the agency had shown up early and gone upstairs. Maybe the cleaning crew missed the spot and came back. But the more she listened, the more her skin prickled. These weren't casual footsteps. These weren't the movements of someone cleaning or walking around. These were calculated. Each step seemed to land with intention, like someone wanted to be heard. She called out once. Nothing. Then again, louder. Still nothing. A knot twisted in her stomach, but she forced herself up the stairs, holding her phone like a weapon. The hallway was empty. The doors were all closed. She opened each one slowly. Bedroom 1 empty. Guest room empty. Bathroom quiet as a tomb. When she opened the last door at the end of the hall, the master bedroom, she half expected something to be waiting. But there was nothing. No one. The room was completely still. Except, the air was colder here. She could feel it on her arms. Her breath puffed out faintly, visible for just a second. That made no sense. It was nearly 70 degrees outside. There were no AC units running. Then she saw the mirror. A tall, vintage-style standing mirror leaned in the far corner of the room. It hadn't been in the staging photos from the agency. She didn't remember it being listed in the inventory. But there it was, tilted just slightly away from the wall, facing the bed. Something about it felt wrong. The glass was too dark, the frame too old. She didn't approach it. She just stared, her reflection looking back at her, hazy and distorted. She left the room quickly. Back downstairs, the mood of the house didn't improve. If anything, it felt worse. The shadows were deeper. The silence more oppressive. She tried to focus, pulled out her phone again, and took a few more shots, this time from the living room. She wanted to be done and out before the open house officially began. A few minutes later, she checked her phone gallery. Every photo was black. Not underexposed. Not blurry. Pitch black. All except one. The last image. It was from the living room. In the photo, the room appeared strangely dim, but that wasn't what caught her attention. It was the mirror on the far wall. In the reflection, standing just behind where she had been, was a face. Not hers. It was pale, hollow-eyed, male, and smiling. Her body froze. Her hands shook. She looked around the room. Nothing. Just furniture and silence. But she knew that face hadn't been imagined. She had felt it, whatever it was, watching her since she stepped through the front door. Jenna didn't grab her bag. She didn't turn off the lights. She didn't even lock the door behind her. She walked out of the house without looking back, climbed into her car, and drove off with her heart slamming in her chest like a warning bell. Later that evening, she sent a single message to the agency. "I'm not doing the Marrow Lane listing. Please assign someone else." No explanation. No argument. And 3 weeks had passed since Jenna dropped the Marrow Lane listing without a word. The office gossip chalked it up to burnout. Some said she just cracked. But Tony didn't buy into that kind of talk. He was the kind of guy who didn't flinch at whispers. No patience for ghost stories or nervous agents. Jenna's nerves were her problem, not his. Tony was from Pittsburgh. Tough, pragmatic, a straight shooter. He'd been closing properties for years, even in some of the rougher neighborhoods. When the agency asked if he'd take over the house at 421 Marrow Lane, he didn't hesitate. Easy commission, they said. Quiet area. Decent square footage. If there was anything wrong with it, he figured it was just a bad smell or outdated plumbing. He showed up on a Thursday afternoon, early autumn. The sky was overcast, giving everything that dull gray tint, like someone turned the color down on the world. The house looked the same as in the photos, plain but fine. Ordinary. Almost too ordinary. Tony had brought along a couple, first-time homebuyers, both in their 20s. He didn't bother telling them about Jenna. Why stir the pot? The tour started well. They liked the open layout, the natural light. The wife loved the kitchen backsplash. Tony made a joke about flipping it for profit. They laughed. It felt like a done deal. Until the husband asked to see the basement. And that's when the whole vibe shifted. Tony led them to the hallway off the kitchen. He'd seen the floor plans. The basement entrance was supposed to be right there, right beside the pantry. But it wasn't. There was no door. No hinges. No seams in the wall. Just a smooth white panel, freshly painted. Like it had never existed. Tony blinked. Checked his phone. Opened the blueprint. He wasn't crazy. The stairs should have been right there. He even knocked on the wall. It sounded solid. The couple exchanged glances. Awkward. Polite confusion. Then they made their exit. Tony, a little rattled but unwilling to admit it, promised to follow up. He stayed behind. At first, he assumed it was a renovation issue. Maybe the door was moved, drywalled over accidentally, but something about it didn't sit right. The paint was too clean, too fresh, like someone had covered the entrance on purpose, and recently. He left that day, but the image stayed in his mind. That blank white wall, where a staircase should have been. It was eating at him. That night, he went back. Alone. The house was darker than it should have been. Even with the lights on, shadows clung to the corners. He brought a flashlight just in case, the kind with a rubber grip and a heavy-duty beam. The air inside felt cooler than before. The silence was thicker. He went straight to the hallway. No hesitation this time. And there it was. Upon closer inspection, the outline was barely visible. Faint ridges where a frame used to be, the texture just slightly different from the rest of the wall. The doorknob had been painted over, but the shape was unmistakable. A small metal bulge beneath the white. Tony reached into his bag and pulled out a utility knife. Scraped around the edge. Paint flaked away like dead skin. The door creaked open. Behind it, darkness. Not just unlit, but deep. Swallowing. The kind of black that feels alive. He aimed the flashlight into the stairwell. It barely cut through the thick air. The beam shimmered in dust motes that drifted like ash. The walls were unfinished. Raw concrete. Damp. He hesitated for only a second. Then he stepped inside. Each step downward groaned under his weight. The farther he went, the colder it got. The kind of cold that bites at your skin, that makes your breath cloud even when your heart's beating too fast for you to notice. The house creaked above him, or below. It was hard to tell anymore. Halfway down, the flashlight flickered. Then again. And then it went out. Just like that. No warning. No dying glow. Just darkness. Tony froze. Held his breath. A soft sound reached him. A shuffle. Not far below. Then something else. Breathing. Slow. Wet. Heavy. And it wasn't his. He turned to scramble back up the stairs, hard hammering, hands gripping the railing. But the steps behind him groaned again. Something was coming up. And then, silence. The next morning, when the agency tried calling Tony to check in, they got nothing. No reply. No voicemail. By noon, someone from the office drove out to the property. His car was still in the driveway. Parked at an angle, driver's side door unlocked. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Inside, everything looked untouched. Except one thing. At the top of the now visible basement stairs, the door wide open, was Tony's phone. Just sitting there. Screen cracked. Flashlight still on. There was only one photo in the gallery. A blurry, grainy shot. Taken in the basement. It showed a stairwell. Concrete walls. Deep black shadows. Tony was never seen again. There were no police reports. No press releases. No search efforts. By the time October rolled in, the house at 421 Marrow Lane had become a stain the agency quietly ignored. No official memo was ever sent. No one dared speak Tony's name aloud in the office. But the message was clear: don't go near that property. Still, every business has someone who won't back down. For this agency, that was Diane Kay. Diane had been in real estate for over 2 decades. She'd seen foreclosures with squatters still living inside, houses where people had died, even one with a buried septic tank that exploded mid-tour. She didn't scare easy. So when she heard about Jenna quitting and Tony vanishing, she didn't roll her eyes like the younger agents. She got angry. Not at the house. At fear. She believed in energy. Negative energy, residual trauma, maybe even spirits, but not the Hollywood kind. So if something was off about the property, she wasn't going to run. She was going to fix it. Diane made a call to someone she trusted. A spiritual medium she'd worked with once, years ago, when a client refused to move into a home where a child had drowned. The medium had brought calm, closure, and surprisingly, a signed contract. That's what Diane wanted, closure. She didn't tell anyone from the agency what she was doing. Just said she'd take a look one last time before officially removing the house from the books. They arrived just after 2 p.m. It was bright out, unseasonably warm for mid-October. Trees were beginning to shed, scattering crisp orange leaves across the front lawn. The house stood in its usual posture, quiet, unremarkable still. But the second they stepped into the foyer, everything shifted. The air thick, the light dull. The silence had a texture, like wool being pulled over their ears. The medium stopped cold. She was a thin woman in her 60s, small and sun-wrinkled, dressed in layers of shawls and beads. She didn't move past the threshold, just stood there, eyes wide. Diane asked her what was wrong, but the medium barely whispered. "He's still here," she said. "He doesn't want to leave." And then her voice dropped lower, almost frightened. "He doesn't like visitors." Diane barely had time to process what she'd heard when the front door slammed shut behind them. So hard the walls trembled. And then, one by one, every window in the house slammed closed in quick succession. Bang, 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 like a giant fist pounding the entire frame of the house. The light bulbs above them flickered, then exploded with soft pops, plunging the house into darkness. The medium stepped forward and began chanting, softly at first, then louder, words Diane didn't recognize. The tone was rhythmic, almost melodic, like a lullaby from another time. But her voice didn't last long, because something began screaming. A man's voice. Deep, raw, agonized. And it wasn't coming from upstairs. It was coming from beneath them. The sound tore through the floorboards, muffled at first, like someone was yelling from far below. Then louder, as if it were moving, rising. The medium faltered. Her chant broke. She turned toward the living room, eyes wide with something close to panic. And then she was gone, swallowed by the shadows, out of sight. Diane tried to move, to run, but her legs felt like they were being pulled from below. Heavy, pinned. She looked down. Her feet weren't tangled. There was no rope, no debris. But she felt it, like fingers wrapping around her ankles. Squeezing. She screamed. Tried to lift one leg. Couldn't. Tried again. Nothing. The screaming from below grew louder, impossibly loud now, echoing through the walls and vibrating the air. She dropped to the floor, crawling forward with her elbows, dragging herself inch by inch toward the door. The hardwood scraped her knees, tore her stockings, dug into her skin. Behind her, the temperature plummeted. She felt breath on her neck. Cold, sour. Something was close. Watching. She didn't look back. She couldn't. She reached the door. Still shut. Still locked. But then, it creaked open on its own. She tumbled out onto the porch, the bright afternoon light hitting her like a slap. She lay there for a moment, panting, legs still numb. Then she scrambled away, crawling backward down the steps, her eyes locked on the open doorway. But nothing followed her. Not yet. The front door slowly closed behind her. Softly this time. And that was it. No sign of the medium. No screaming. No lights. Just the house, sitting there like nothing had happened. Diane didn't go back. Not to the house. Not to the agency. She handed in her resignation a few days later. No explanation. Just said she was done with real estate. As for the medium, she was never found. No missing persons report was ever filed. No body. No last call. Just gone. Some say the house took her. Others say she found whatever it was buried beneath that basement and never made it back up. Either way, 421 Marrow Lane was pulled from the market for good. No more showings. No more photos. No more agents. The listing disappeared like it had never existed. But sometimes, when the wind blows through that neighborhood just right, locals say they hear something echoing from inside the boarded-up walls. A voice. Low. Male. Still screaming. The listing for 421 Marrow Lane still exists online, though no contact agent is listed, and the phone number leads to a dead line. Locals say the house still stands empty, but sometimes, at night, the porch light flickers on, and someone watches from the upstairs window. No one dares to go inside, and no realtor will ever touch it again.